let's see if we can get this to fit. So as you've just seen, we've put a little curve in here, which just follows this curves outwards and flares outwards to this bulkhead, which you can't see on camera right now. So you'll have to get it right in. Yeah, as I suspected, my my curve is just a little bit too sharp. Let's try it again. It's quite an unusual shape, so it's going to take probably several test fits to get it right. And what we don't want is it overhanging the door and being in the door opening. This is quite tricky actually. Maybe we do end up shortening this. There we go. There we go. And we just have to get it to stand up. Perfect. Okay, that looks about right to me. So I'm happy with that one. Let's leave that one there. Then we have a much longer one, which goes around the front here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bend in it from the middle, and we'll try and gently curve it using our rolling mat and a large dowel. Right, let's see how that first roll does. Oh, that's not bad for a first attempt. So we just need it a little bit in at the ends there. So I think the front bit's okay. We just need to tighten the curve at the ends and we'll be done. So that wasn't bad for a first attempt. Right, second attempt. And we just want to bring these ends in a little bit. See how that does. Right, second fitting attempt. I think that's got worse rather than better. Okay, attempt 3. Get this lined up at this one edge against the door. Oh, that looks a lot better, doesn't it? Yeah, I think that'll do nicely. Yeah, that looks the part. Happy with that. That's our railing fitted into the corner. You can see that unusual little flare quick out at the end there. And I'm quite pleased that it seems to meet perfectly with the little plastic rod handrail that we glued in earlier on. So I got my heights pretty much bob on. That was good luck. So our little scratch-built jack staff needs to be put into this position here. Now we're using the kit part base for that, and it doesn't quite fit. So rather than messing around trying to sand down the peg, I'm just going to open up the hole. Because there's a little base plate on this, you're not going to see a wider hole anyway. So just going to open that up. It's the quickest option. Well, that fits in, but it doesn't go all the way down. So what I'm going to do is just trim down the base so the peg's a lot shorter. Right, much happier with that. So little spot of glue and we should be okay. Now sometimes this nozzle is just still a little bit too big, so and this is one of those occasions, so we'll just put some on a pin and drop a little drop in there. Let's make sure that's nice and straight. Looks like it is. Brill. Now when it comes to putting our railings on, they've been given a first base coat. The railings here and here are white all over. They don't have a wooden top rail like most of the railings will have. So I think what we can do is we can put this set of railings in next. Shouldn't get in the way of putting a little bit of guide rope on there. We need the glue to dry first, and that needs paint and a varnish. So a little bit of rigging line probably be one of the last things we do. So I'm going to put the first bit of railing on. I'm using Rocket Sino glue gel for this. It's about a 10-second bonding time, which is partly the reason why we've pre-shaped the railing so that we know they're pretty much going to go in as we want. But that 10 seconds does give me a little bit of wriggle time. 10 seconds is quite a bit actually. Most of my glues are 5 seconds or less. So that gives me a little bit of time. We're going to start here. We need to get the start point absolutely right so that we don't have a gap at the bow. So that is my priority. The length of that is a little bit secondary in my mind. So we've not put glue on the full length, we're just putting it on a small section, and then we can hold the railing in place while it bonds. There we go. So that's the front in. We don't have to run glue along the full length, just enough to get it into the places where we want it to hold. Go. And a little bit of this back end, and that should be job done for that first one. There we go, that's our first section of railing in. Happy with that. So we can then give that a second coat of paint, which will key it in with this edge. We can do any touch up in this area as well that we might feel, and then we're on to this next bit of railing. So I think we could do this section of railing here next while we're at it. So is that going to get in the way of doing that? Maybe we need to do those next. Well, they need a little bit more painting first. We can probably do this railing that goes around the base of the sandcastle. Let's get this one on and see how we get on. So the most important thing with this second railing is to make sure that we get a perfect join right here at the front. We've got two upright sections that butt against each other, and we need to make sure that there is absolutely no gap or misalignment. So that is absolutely the priority with this first little bit of the railing. So there we go. That is worked out okay. Yeah, that's on okay. Good. And the same process, we can just gently flex the railing out, which allows me to run a little bit of the gel underneath. It's important that you don't put too much on, otherwise it's going to make a little mess. There we go, and then just this last section right at the back here. Okay, that is our bow railings in. Happy with that. Okay, so I'm next going to look at this section around the base of the sandcastle. And we can do this front section first. So we know that that fits in okay because we tried it before, so I'm quite happy to put some gel along the full length of the base of this railing. Okay, we have to be careful not to make a mess with this. We want it right touching the base of the plastic superstructure. No gap between the railing and the superstructure. Okay, that is in. It's about 1mm short of the doorway, and that's probably to allow for that photo etch part that we're not using, the little wind cover that was added later. So just bear that in mind when you're placing it. But that looks all right to me, so I'm happy to put the little back pieces in. So I'm going to do this one. I know you can't see it. Once in, that looks great. The railing is ever so slightly too high. It should be just below the windows, and it's sort of just on the window line, really. And I think it is ever so slightly too tall. However, it's definitely better than no railing. Let's see if we can get this one in. So just like before, no gap between the plastic and the railing. So it's basically going along the bottom of the railing. Yeah, that's in. That looks fine. Yeah, happy with that. So next I want to deal with these little ladders and platforms. The ladder goes up to the platform basically, so if we put the ladder on first and then the platform on top, everything should be aligned in the right place. So again, I'm using the same gel glue. Trouble is when you're filming, is you can't get the angle right for actually building the model because you've got to have a camera angle as well. I'll do that off camera. See if I can add the platform on camera. You can see we've got the ladders on now. Right, stop poking. That's all good. Right, let's put this breakwater railing in. Seems a little odd that there's railing on there, if I'm honest, because if it's a breakwater and it's there to get a battering, surely the railing would get battered. So I just need to glue that into place at that end now. Fantastic. Now we had a gap issue, didn't we? So I'm going to put the other railing in from on this side, and then we've got a little gap to adjust with the railing from the gold medal set. So I'd already given that a base paint as well. So first coat before we put it on. Making sure we get that apex right is the priority here. Yeah. So I am going to put a little bit of glue, just running glue on the underside of that small section first, and we'll get that lined up with the corner. Just do that bit for now. It seems to have dropped behind a little bit. Okay, that still fits, that's good. Okay, let's get this on. Okay, and then we've just got a little bit to do at that back end, that last little section. Okay, that is on. So we've just got this little gap to fill. It's just bothering me a little bit, that. So we seem to have dropped off the top of the breakwater there and just fallen behind it. There we go. Right, so just push it behind for a sec. What we'll do is we'll just put a little bit of glue on the top edge there. Doesn't need very much at all. Then we can lift the railing onto the top of it. There we go. That should hold. So with that railing gone, we've just got this little gap to fill. So we have a piece of railing that we can use for that. Just got to understand how wide. So about where my tweezers were, so So let's test fit that and see how we have got on. Remembering that the bottom two rails are closer together than the upper two. So in other words, don't put it on upside down. Yeah, I think that'll look fine. So I'm actually turning that piece round so the stanchion is against the chain opening here. So let's get some glue on that and get that on. There you go, you would never know. Happy with that. Right, I'm going to go away and do all the touch up on there, and I've got a little bit of paintwork to deal with for the railings to go around the cufflinks. Once that is done and we're ready to install, and this has all had a second lot, then I'll come back to you because we've got a little bit more work to do on this front section next, and we've got to put the rigging on our jackstaff. Before I can finally add all these little bits of railing around the spare propellers, we've got this guttering to go down. That needs to go down first. So we primed it black and then we've painted it in the MIG steel colour, which is different to the stainless steel that we've used on the propeller blades themselves. So there should be a little bit of a contrast, but it's got a perforation to it in real life, and that is depicted on the etch. So I just want to pick that out a little bit. So to do that, I'm going to make a thin black wash using some acrylic. I nearly said acrylic oil paint, but you know what I mean. Acrylic tube paint. So simply going to put a small amount of this black paint into. Well, this is actually a tablet blister pack. You can see contents are now gone, so don't need to worry about that. And then we're going to use some acrylic flow improver as a thinner for that. And what I'm actually going to do is put the flow improver in there neat like that. And because we're making a wash, what I'll actually do is just take some of the paint and move it into the thinner and do it that way. There we go, that's starting to come together now. And that should be sufficient to just bring the perforation to life a little bit. As the flow improver dries off, all our little black pigment will drop into the perforation, which we can now see a fair bit better already. Okay, we are ready to put some rigging on this jackstaff. So all the rigging on the Queen Mary 2 is white, not black or any other colour you might think it might be. It is white. So I have some, I forget whose it is now, but I have some white rigging. It's like EZ lines, that sort of elastic stuff. So let me get my glasses on. And what we need to do is have the rigging line run from 1 yard arm down to about halfway and then back up to the other yard arm. So I'm going to start by cutting a length that I know is more than enough. And we're going to tie it in a knot at the point we want it to terminate on the main line there. Right, that's going to hold that in place. And I'm just going to give that the tiniest dab of glue. Fortunately, this stuff sticks pretty much instantly. And then we'll just have to take it up to the yard arm. So we'll put a little dab of glue just underneath the end of the yard arm there, which is where I want our touch point to be. We don't want any sag in this, but we don't need to overstretch it either. It's important it's tight when it touches. As you can see, that's already glued now. So pulling it tight and then taking it up to where we want it to bond. Hold it for a sec. And then what I do is I just loosen and drop the tweezers a little bit, and if it stays in place and you get this slackening above where you've glued it, you know it's bonded. Right, so just going to trim that off now. So I'm going to stretch the end and use my Tamiya scissors. I can just cut that off. There we go, that is our jackstaff rigged. So under the bridge we have some little supports, and I'm just cutting them out of 0.2 plastic rod, and right now I am just getting the height right They're quite small. There's 3 of them on each side in total. So you have one at this corner point here, comes down and sits on top of this observation bulwark. You have one at this point here, does exactly the same. And then there's one that sits further back inside. And that will be probably the most tricky one to do. I had intended to drill through the deck of the bridge and feed it down, and then just totally forgot. So, you know, and I've talked about doing it many times, so that was definitely the plan, but come the day, just totally forgot. There we go. So that's my first one cut, and it is 3mm long. Now, I'm not going to make the same assumption that it's exactly the same on the other side. It would be lovely if it was, because it would mean everything's nice and square. But that's just not real life, is it? No, indeed, it's slightly small for the other side, so there we have it. So this is the first of 2 posts on each side that we need to add. And the correct point for this post is the furthest point out where the bridge overhangs this. There's a point where this tucks underneath and the bulwark is sticking out further than the front edge of the bridge. So where those 2 cross is where you need this to be. You can just see that there. I think you'll get a better view when I come to do that one. Now the second one is in the corner of the bridge, and that actually goes and sits right down on the deck. Like so. My next thing that we need to think about is all of these decals that go on the forward superstructure. They wrap round the side, they go round the back, and then we've also got the Cunard logo to go on the front. So yeah, a lot of decals to add. And my concern with these decals, these black ones that make the black stripes up, is that the decal film appears to go over the windows. So that is not going to look right. If you have the open windows, you can cut them out. but we've already glazed them, so I hadn't thought about that really. So we might be using this as a set of paint masks maybe. If we carefully cut these out, then the paper that's left behind will work for making masks, in theory. I need to think about it, but we can certainly put the Cunard logo up straight on. So I'm going to do that one first. Whilst this is soaking, I'm going to leave you with Stephen.
How the Atlantic Queens came about, we need to see what preceded them. And in fact, during the period from 1920 to 1938, Cunard operated 3 ships on the Atlantic run. There was the Mauretania of 1907, that was for 22 years the fastest transatlantic liner in the world, running at a speed of about 26 3/4 knots. The Aquitania, built in 1914, immediately prior to the First World War, and she was significantly larger than the Mauretania. In fact, the Aquitania was Cunard's answer to the Olympic and Titanic, White Star Line. And the third ship was the Berengaria, which in fact was the imperator of the Hamburg America line that had been ceded to Cunard after the First World War because of the loss of the Lusitania in the submarine attack in 1915. Now, what's significant is that these 3 ships were quite disparate. They operated at different speeds, they were of different size, different style of decoration. And what Cunard really longed was to have a homogeneous and uniform type of ship that they could operate on the Atlantic. Now here is the Mauretania. She was the sister ship of the Lusitania. When she was built in 1907, she was the largest passenger ship in the world, alongside Lusitania. And she had a marvellous career, spanning, as you can see there, up to 1935. As we've said previously, held the Atlantic speed record for 22 years. She was initially coal-fired, and she required over 1,000 tons of coal per day to be shoveled into her furnaces to reach the speed of over 26 knots. And she would take nearly a week in Liverpool and in New York refueling, because of the amount of coal that she consumed every day on the voyages. The Aquitania, here she is, also 4-funnelled, half as big again as the Mauretania, but somewhat slower, and she was dubbed the Ship Beautiful. She had a very long, very prestigious career with Cunard, the only Cunard ship to serve in both the First and the Second World War, and she was scrapped in 1950. The third ship was the Hapag Imperator, which was refitted to become the Berengaria. And each one of these 3 ships was changed to oil firing immediately after the First World War, which greatly aided their operation, completely reduced the number of engine room staff needed, and made it much, much quicker to refuel the ships. Now, in 1927, Cunard decided that they should look to the future, and they started studies to replace the 3 ships. And naval architecture and marine engineering progressed to the point that they considered that for a weekly transatlantic service, that could now be operated by 2 rather than 3 ships. The ships would have to be substantially bigger than any of the existing trio in order to carry sufficient engines to travel much faster, up to 28.5 knots, but carry enough passengers to still make a profit.
Okay, I have come to a decision on what we're doing with the black stripes. We'll talk about that in a sec. But first, we need to get this Cunard logo on. And it pretty much ends right next to this little lamp on the side here. I just need to make sure that that's looking straight, and it is. Perfect, so that's the first one on. Right, what I've decided to do with the black painted stripes is to paint them black, and what we can do is use the decals to make sure we get the angles at the ends right when we're masking off. So it's going to be a case of carefully masking off, painting them in very carefully, and then we can give them a satin varnish and key it all in. So just out of interest, I've just tried fitting this decal to the corresponding point on the front of the ship there, just to see if it was going to be easier than masking, because I'm struggling a little bit with the masking because the shape is so unusual at the front of the ship. So this area here, it is so unusual that it's curving in that direction and it's curving backwards as well. So getting the masking tape to sit correctly is very, very difficult. So I thought, well, actually, let's just check whether doing the decals wouldn't be easier. So I've just come to put this one on, and I've got the same problem with the decal that I have with the masking tape, but I've also got additional problems with the decal. So the decal too will not sit perfectly correctly in this curve. So this is this lowest one, which goes on this third row of windows down, terminates here. And what you're getting is, if you line this first window up with that window there, then this bit between the two windows is actually too long. And so you can't line up those windows without a sort of a bump in the middle of extra decal. It's also struggling with the shape, so it's going to gather up. And also the windows are too large. They're larger than the plastic windows, so you get a little white ring on the inside, which doesn't look right when your glazed part of the window is black. So they're pretty much useless. So the best way forward is absolutely to mask it and use, I'm using the decals to get the angles right. It's a very painstaking process to get this done, so don't think for a minute that this is an easy task, because it isn't. Okay, I have masked off the front of the superstructure ready for the black. It's quite a difficult process because the masking tape has to cope with the curve that way, and also the fact that we're gently moving backwards as well. So it's quite a difficult task to get it right, but using the decals as templates, it has worked out okay. Once I've pressed all this tape down, I have sealed it all with some Humbrol clear varnish, and that will just help stop any black paint leaching out. The black we're going to use is 17950 Vallejo black, and because it's jet black on the actual ship, and that should stand out quite nicely as darker than the dark grey. Okay, so let's see how this goes. I've thinned it down slightly, tried not to do it too thin, because I don't want it running and seeping. I've only masked the front so far. We'll deal with masking the sides and the back later on. It's a little bit difficult at this angle, I've got to be honest. That looks okay, doesn't it? You've got a better view than I have right now, so I'm just going to move. Okay, I can't see what I'm doing very well. You guys get the idea. I'm going to carry on off camera.